but those are definitely related, but it doesn't mean that Kundalini energy is always orgasmic or that Kundalini energy is always sexual, but they definitely go together.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's not always orgasmic. I mean, I've had experience with Kundalini energy in plant ceremonies and in some meditations, and it's not, but it's sensual and it's powerful, and there's something, I guess you could say there's something sexual, absolutely sexual about it, but it's not like it's different. I don't know it's hard to put into words.
Yeah, it's not the horny sexual energy that we're used to in our body, but it's actually one of the more subtle energies that sexuality, one of the more refined energies that sexuality also has. And this is, again, like if we look in the West, the sexual energy that we feel, most of it is very horny. It's like in our body, we feel it, especially for a man. There's like the big heart strong erection that's there and it's visible and it feels so physical. But that's just a very small part of sexual energy that we can feel. Again, it's very limited if we only stick to that energy, because there's so much different flavors that we can experience of feeling that type of energy in our body. But most of us are just staying with the horny part, and it's like, oh my god, it feels so good, and I'm rushing because now I want to have that orgasm, and then I have to release it, and okay, now I can go to sleep. But then we miss out on this whole other spectrum. That's like looking at the spectrum of colors and be like, okay, no, I'm only gonna work with red and like the different shades of red, and we forget that like all the colors of the rainbow we can experience and feel. But it's like, no, I'm just going to stick to the color red, and it's like that's very limited way of experiencing what's available.
It is. Welcome to Far Out with Faust, everyone. I'm Faust Chicho, and today I'm sitting here with the lovely Arja Hendrikx. As most of you probably know, if you're tuning into her live stream, Arja is a tantric practitioner and sacred sexuality teacher who holds tantra workshops and retreats all around the world. She teaches from the traditional perspective and mixes it with some modern techniques to create a harmonious and balanced, down-to-earth approach. Thank you so much for beaming in, Arja. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm honored.
So basically, the 10 to 15% of the kind of scriptures that are the ancient tantric scriptures, right, that come from India. Although I've read like that some of them also have roots in Buddhism, but particularly in India and Hinduism. How did it get so mixed? Like, how did it become kind of so associated with sex, especially in Western culture? Like, what happened? When did that happen?
And in this side of the world, sex was very much portrayed as a forbidden fruit. Right? It's like you do it behind closed doors. It's seen as a sin. So then when there's heard of, okay, but there's like other cultural traditions and spiritual ways, and that and there they include sex, it's like, because it's so forbidden and there's so much secrecy around sex, and I feel like this desire, because it is so suppressed, it's like then the only thing that remains in people's minds is like, oh yeah, it has to do something with sex, and they just forget about everything else. So I think that even shows actually how important this topic of sexuality is, because from something that is so broad that can give us teachings how to really be happy in life, the only thing that people remember is like, oh, but it includes sex, so you can have all these orgasms and you have deeper intimacy, and it's like that's the only thing that people
I think it's like breathing and like sex, but I don't really know about it. Yeah, no, people have all kinds of ideas about it, but but there isn't a lot of, especially with men, I think if men understood what Tantra and Tantric sex, what it truly was, I mean, I think they'd be a lot more interested in it, but I don't think that there's a general understanding with most men. Now, I think like men who are more spiritually natured and on that path I think inevitably you come across it. That's how I came across it. And thank God I did, because it's, you know, it's a game changer, as you know. You know, but what got you so passionate about it? I mean, you know, was there a point in your life when you realized that this was your joy, this was your passion, that you wanted to teach this?
Yeah, there's one thing that I do want to touch upon before I answer this
Go
question,
for it.
but because I know your audience are mainly men. I think, first of all, men just never received a different education, because most of men's education comes from porn. And sex, the way that it's demonstrated in porn, is very one-sided, right? It's very limited. It's like, it's a clear start, there's a clear finish. There's always like a certain pattern that they follow. The man is always hard and ready to go, and the woman is wet and she's squirting. And there's like, it's a very limited way of portraying sex, but it gives us the idea that this is how it's done and that is all there is. And then porn like stimulates so much dopamine in the man's brain that it's like they want that intensity. Like it trains the body in a way of wanting sex in that way, which then makes them less interested in wanting sex to explore it in different ways. But what I see a lot in my male clients, it's like, even yesterday I had a beautiful conversation with a man. He's like, yeah, I've had sex for like 20 years like this now. And he's like, you know, it's just kind of the same all the time. He's like, I'm losing my interest. I'm getting bored. So for those men that want to explore something new, that love sex, you know, tantric sexuality is a beautiful way to just try something new. And then to answer your question, like, and that for me, it just opened all doors. I just experienced sex in a way that was completely different from what we see in Hollywood medias or Hollywood movies or the media or in magazines or, you know, on porn. And it was just like, what? Sex can be like this? And it's, you know, it opened and transformed so much for me, not only sexually in the way that I'm relating, but by opening up my sexuality, my confidence opens, like everything opened. Like I wasn't only like happy and energized and charged sexually, but that sexual energy is so powerful. It radiates out. Like I built a whole business from it. It's like it brings a joy in life that I think a lot of people are searching for outside of themselves, but maybe a beautiful car or an expensive house or a new iPhone and all these products that we try to buy. It's like, charge your sexual energy and your joy is just going to radiate from inside.
If
you know,
only people knew, right? I mean, people don't understand the power that, I mean, that is a life force. That is the same power that creates a baby. I mean, imagine the kind of energy that is a little bit of godhood, and it's part of each and every one of us as a human being. And it's so powerful. And you can, you know, it's like, it's almost like electricity, you know what I mean? Or think about it like, you know, we know how to power everything remotely now, right? You can't see the signal from the remote, right? But we know there's a signal there because it activates the television, for example, or the whatever. And so if you can be, what I'm trying to say is, don't dismiss this, guys, because you can't put your finger on it, because you can't see it. It is absolutely bona fide. It is a real thing, and it is powerful, and it can change your life. You know, this is a incredible power that you can come into, and the power that comes with joy and living in, you know, such a joyful existence is another powerful way to manifest. So I just wanted to put that out there, because, you know, when you start to talk about manifesting, and, you know, some guys are going to be like, oh, this is woo woo. And they're going to be like, yeah, it's not for me. I don't believe in that stuff. You know, so I'm just encouraging the guys who are thinking like that to stay with us. You're not going to want to miss this, where this is going.
Yeah. And also, I mean, the you can't see it, but you can feel it. Like all of us feel sexual energy in our body. All of us know how good it feels when we just had really hot, steamy, juicy sex that felt deep and intimate and connecting, like how good we feel afterwards. Like for a man, it's so satisfying to see a woman in orgasm, right?
Yeah.
But like in conventional sex or ordinary sex, it's like the woman maybe has like one orgasm or she squirts a bit. Like if you become a tantric lover, you can give your woman multiple full body orgasms that don't last for a few seconds, but that like go on for minutes, like, and for men themselves.
And for guys too, listen.
Like there's more than just an ejaculation orgasm in seconds. Like you can have pleasure that is in your whole body. So yeah, it's just, it's mind blowing what you can feel. You're first of all, you're hitting all my questions already, but I want to get guys to understand how men are multi-orgasmic beings. That this is not we've been taught that it's that females were lucky enough to be born on that side of the sexual equation, but that's not true. That's just what we've been taught. Men are absolutely orgasmic. Maybe some of you just don't know it. But if you explore these techniques and if you begin to understand them, you will realize that you have every capacity to be multi-orgasmic. And it's incredible. I've stumbled across this, years ago. The first book that I read that clued me to this was, and it was just like a small section of the book, but it's called The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life by Drunvalo Melchizedek. And I read that, and he has this section about how the Egyptians understood this and how they practiced it and how it was just this, they knew how to use sex to rejuvenate the body, and it was tantric. And I was like, wow. And I started looking into it. And then I read the Magdalene manuscripts, which I'm sure that I actually took the book out because I love this book, but it's such a great book, guys. But it's the Alchemies of Horus and the Sex Magic of Isis, and incredible books. But that kind of blew my mind, and then I started to really study these techniques and explore them. And like, guys, you definitely want to look into this. Like, if you want to have like a renaissance period in your relationship, in your sex life, even if it's already filled with culture and art, my God, this is for you. It's incredible. It's a game changer. 100%. And I think there's always, when it comes to sex, I think there's just this natural instinct that we have of wanting to explore more. Like there's also this idea that when couples are longer term together, that they kind of get bored or they get in the same routine, and like the eyes maybe start to look outside of the relationship. And like tantric lovemaking is a way to bring energy back into your relationship. Like there's so much to explore because it goes deeper than just the physical explorations as we know it. So it's like, it can really bring like a new spark, bring sexual energy. Like all the long-term tantric couples that I know, they still have a thriving sex life after like 15 years because, their sex is just continuously new and goes deeper, and it doesn't go in this like regular routine or this linear way of lovemaking what we see in the world. So I think it just brings a lot of excitement, and especially if your sex is already good, it's like that's a great recipe to like make it even better.
Absolutely. And it really can get better and better. I think for married couples, this might be hard to imagine. I mean, I know a few married people who would be like, yeah, well, I'm not interested. But it is possible to explore this, and you might reinvigorate your interest is what I'm driving at. But because it's an incredible practice and power, and it gives you an opportunity to not only practice being present with your partner, but reconnecting and rekindling that intimacy flame, which has maybe been lost over the years. Yeah. So, Arja, I wanted to, I love how you talk about in some of your posts and your teaching, how you get in touch with the divine masculine, and having read about clinical studies of like multi-orgasmic men who have been in practice with this, and what they found in these men was that remarkably, statistically on a page, like what was going on with them was almost identical to what was happening in women. And I'm like, well, that's incredible. We always think like we're such different animals, but the truth is we all come from the same thing, right? And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how you've learned to incorporate the masculine, the divine masculine, including the divine feminine, because masculinity has gotten a bad rap, and probably for good reason when you take a look at the patriarchal system in the world. But I would love to hear about how you've done that and how it's helped you understand everything.
Yeah, I think I'm really happy you touch upon that subject, because what I see a lot right now, not only for men but also for women, like I think a lot of women stepped into their own masculinity, trying to rule in this world that's due to patriarchy very male dominated and very like masculine orientated in the way that everything works. So a lot of women, instead of dropping into their femininity and try to lead and show up in life from that place, I think they really stepped into their masculinity and try to almost be like a man. Mm-hmm. Which first of all breaks a lot of the attraction between men and women, because a man doesn't want to date another man in a female body. A man wants to be attracted to the energy, right? The attraction that we have between people. It's something that we cannot touch or see, but it's something that we can feel, right? The spark of like attraction is because it's an attraction between opposites.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, right now, masculinity, and also with the whole Me Too movement, that happened a while ago, is that's been put in such a bad light. And I don't agree with that. Like, I agree that we need to find a balance between these energies, between masculine and feminine. And the masculine energy, we need that. Like, even as a woman, like I need my masculine energy to lead my business and to show up in the world and to think and to conclude my trainings. And then I have my feminine that I can drop into and be in my softness and really be connected with my body. And when I meet my partner, I can choose, am I in the masculine or am I in the feminine? And I believe that it's the masculine structure, if that's strong and solid and harmonious and balanced, actually the feminine can come in and really relax. It's like this, visualizing this divine arms that just, if there's somebody that holds you, then you actually feel safe and you can relax. So I think that those components are super important. And unfortunately, all this negativity that's towards men, and especially towards men and their sexual expression, is really limiting for men to actually step into this more like clean and clear, or what's called divine masculine, because there's been so much negativity around men and sex and their sexual expression, and men being shamed for their behaviors. Versus if you come from the tantric tradition, it's like, no, there's nothing wrong with your sexual expression, but it's about, and there's nothing wrong with you having sexual energy, but it's about you learning how to control your sexual energy.
Right. And the appropriate way to express it, which
exactly,
is the bigger challenge, I think, I don't know how much of a challenge it is. I think that, the boundaries have been changed, and so whereas what was once acceptable is now not, and that's the evolution of a society, and things are always in motion. So there's every possibility that will come back around and change again, and that's kind of the nature of the way things find their balance. But for right now, I think the Me Too movement was important in respect that women needed to know that they had a voice every bit as strong as a man, and that they had every right and have every power to say no. I mean, it's that, that they can speak up, and that is absolutely within their power, but it was always within their power. But, sometimes we need a movement to remind and to bring things to the forefront, things that should be in place already. And that's why we have them. So it's like, I don't knock the Me Too movement, but at the same time, I see how it's kind of gone a little, it's gone a little far in places, but
I think the movement was really important to have that like polarity on one hand, but now there is the need for balance, right? There's like that part happened and it's like that got called out, but now it's like, okay, let's bring it back, and let's bring it back to like harmony and balance, and how can we actually show up in a way that feels respectable and authentic and lovable to, you know,
Right.
to everyone involved. Yeah.
Because I mean, I think it's really clear that men need this kind of nurturing, you know, and then we won't need or ever have a Me Too movement again, because, you know, the more men who are educated and understand sexuality in a healthy way, you're not going to have this in a society so rampant, you know.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And hopefully that even made them realize like how, like, oh, you know, actually that energy is so powerful, because see the effect that it has, and hopefully that inclines men even more to take responsibility and be like, I want to master this energy, I want to control, I want to be able to channel this energy in my body. So yeah.
And speaking of channeling it, you know, I mean, tantric practitioners are taught to and teach initiates to kind of harness this energy in their body, right? And that's if you've ever experienced this, you know, and it's not necessarily exclusive to sex. You know, I think that you could have an experience maybe in a meditation, and that was my question, is like, can you talk a little bit about, you know, it is a union with the divine. I don't know how else. I think it's a perfect way to describe it, you know. But I wanted you to talk a little bit about your personal experience with this incredible power, and my question is like, I know Kundalini is involved, but I'm not sure how it fits in. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, you mean how Kundalini fits in with the sexual energy? Is that your question?
I mean,
how it fits in like the practices, or?
Well, I mean, like, okay, like I saw like this little 5-minute excerpt from Gwyneth Paltrow's show on Netflix, because my wife was like, you should watch this. They're doing a show on it's on Tantric, and I'm like, I don't want to watch Gwyneth Paltrow. But she's like, just watch it, because they're using energy. The man is using energy on the woman, and he's bringing her a lot of pleasure, because they've gotten really good at this energetic sexual exchange. And I'm like, that's Kundalini. He's got one hand on her, you know, I want to say root chakra, or down in her genital area, but he's not touching her, and he's got one hand above her crown. And she's got a blindfold on, and he's working with her. And I'm like, that's absolutely Kundalini energy that he is working with, because he's got her on the table. She's kind of writhing like a snake. And I'm like, and I'm just, my mind is like going in 100. I have 100 questions for you.
Well, that understanding of Kundalini energy and how it works with the sexual energy, it's something that I really teach inside of my trainings. It's not, I use PowerPoints for it. It's not something that I can quickly or logically like explain here on a podcast. It would be too complicated. Like, I need to explain the whole anatomy and the different bodies and the coaches, and so yeah, I wouldn't be able to do that. Okay. But yeah, it definitely is Kundalini energy that's being activated. Actually, it's as soon as Kundalini is awakened, it's not Kundalini energy anymore. It becomes Pranic energy. So Kundalini actually means coiled up. So as long as it's still trapped at the root chakra at the base, then it's Kundalini, because it's in a Kund, it's coiled up. But actually, when the energy frees and you see those, you know, those body movements that I think it's in Sex, Love, and Goop that you're talking about.
Yes.
You know, is that she moves into these orgasmic states, and then that's actually pranic energy that's moving to the body.
Pranic.
Pranic. Okay. Also like the you know, you get the physical responses that come with that. Yeah, so, but those are definitely related, but it doesn't mean that Kundalini energy is always orgasmic or that Kundalini energy is always sexual, but they definitely go together.
Right. No, it's definitely, it's not always orgasmic. I mean, I've had experience with Kundalini energy in plant ceremonies and in some meditations, and it's not, you know, but it's sensual and it's powerful, and there's something, I guess you could say there's something sexual, absolutely sexual about it, but it's not like, it's different. I don't know how to, it's hard to put into words.
Yeah, it's not the horny sexual energy that we're used to
No.
in our body, but it's actually one of the more subtle energies that sexuality, one of the more refined energies that sexuality also has. And this is, again, like if we look in the West, the sexual energy that we feel, most of it is very horny. It's like
Right.
in our body, we feel it, especially for a man. There's like the big heart strong erection that's there and it's visible and it feels so physical.
Yeah.
But that's just a very small part of sexual energy that we can feel. Again, it's very limited if we only stick to that energy, because there's so much different flavors that we can experience of feeling that type of energy in our body. But most of us are just staying with the horny part, and it's like, oh my god, it feels so good, and I'm rushing because now I want to have that orgasm, and then I have to release it, and okay, now I can go to sleep.
Right.
But then we miss out on this whole other spectrum. That's like looking at the spectrum of colors and be like, okay, no, I'm only gonna work with red and like the different shades of red, and we forget that like all the colors of the rainbow we can experience and feel. But it's like, no, I'm just going to stick to the color red, and it's like that's very limited way of experiencing what's available.
It is. And the other way that it's limiting, guys, is like, after an orgasm, there's usually a cascade. I mean, especially after an orgasm that is, pretty much run of the mill, the way that we've been referring to, kind of the habitual way most Western men go about it. You tend to kind of fall into a stupor, and you're like, you hit your head hits the pillow and you're snoring before you know it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's a beautiful part of having an orgasm. But what I'm saying, and what I've experienced is, when you start to practice these different techniques, you can end up in a place after sex that is more invigorated, you feel more energy, you feel more grounded, but you're not like, oh, that's a day for me, you're not ready to call it a night or a day or whenever, you did your business. So what I'm saying is, it can be rejuvenating. It can be so much more than just like the end all be all of that occasion.
Yeah, and your woman is going to be so much more happy, because there is something that happens, like the man ejaculates, and often that is the end of sex, right? But then is it the end of the woman? Like the woman doesn't have that same release that the man just experienced, and there's something that changes when a man ejaculates. It's like his energy and the energy kind of withdraws. There's something that's a little bit rejecting in it towards the woman on a very subtle level. It's like there's a shift. It's like, oh my God, I was so energized and was so into you and I was penetrating and I'm here fully with you, and now ejaculated. And I'm like,
literally, yeah.
Which
literally withdrawing. Yeah. I mean,
feel nice. Like you're literally like, okay, now you're soft, you go out, and usually, like, I know so many men that would be like, oh my God, I'm so exhausted right now. I'm like, literally 5 seconds ago, you were
you're ready to fuck.
pumping.
You had a lot of energy 5 minutes ago. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like now you are like a flat tire,
Literally, yeah.
So yeah, also as a woman, if you actually learn to cultivate that energy, then you will feel energized, and then you can put it either into the connection with your partner, or you don't have to feel tired and you put it into your business, or you put it into your work, or you put it into your creative project. It's like, start having sex in the morning and make it a priority, and then don't feel exhausted afterwards, but go charged towards your work, go charged towards your projects, be charged and go and play with your kids, instead of keeping it to the last priority at the end of the night when both of you are tired. And then it's like, oh my God, like then, yeah, it maybe doesn't feel the most amazing thing in the world anymore. And definitely not for a woman that's then like, okay, he came and now I didn't, because maybe, she doesn't have that easy access to her orgasms. And then it's a little disappointing for women, to be honest.
I can only imagine. I mean, I don't know, because I'm not a woman, not this life, but yeah, I don't have a lot of experience on that side of things, but I do know that when you understand how to practice, my dogs are going to come over now and they're like, can we be in the podcast? Sit Cookie. All right. but you know, I do know that this leads to a much fuller relationship, you know, and you don't ever have a partner who's unsatisfied. I don't know how that sounds to my guys who are listening, but I mean, you literally never have to have an unsatisfied partner again. I mean, does that sound like something that you would be interested in? I mean, if you've ever had an experience in the past where you have left a woman hanging because things happen too quickly. I mean, like this is absolutely a route for you to ensure that never happens again. Because unless it's an absolute choice of yours, but it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, right, and it doesn't mean that like one way, you know, it doesn't mean like, oh, never ejaculate again. Well, first of all, you can learn how to have orgasms different way, but it's like, make it a choice. Like, don't let it just be like, oh, shoot, it happened. I didn't have control anymore. You know, and then it instead of like, okay, I'm consciously going to choose that now, you know, I'm moving into orgasm. And also that doesn't have to be the end of your lovemaking, right? Like you can continue
right.
after that.
And it can be a choice that's made together in the moment.
Yeah, instead of like, oh no, I'm coming, and then like I remember like there were times, you know, and that was definitely after I was sexually open already. Like I remember before I was sexually open that I actually was happy when the man came because I was happy that the sex was over. Like sometimes I would even put in extra effort to make him come because sex just wasn't so pleasurable for me. You know, so in those times I would be like, no, I'm happy when he comes because then at least it's finished. So, you know, there's also a lot of women that are sexually don't just have a lot of pleasure and not yet so open. But, you know, if you want to have more amazing lovemaking, you know, and you want your woman to actually enjoy sex like as much as you do and both of you enjoy it even more, then there's just different ways to look into that. And I think that's just really exciting. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with what you're doing now, but it's like, hey, it's not the only way, you know, just there's more
and the truth is we know it when I say I should speak for myself. You know, I always know it when, you know, there's like let's keep this moving along here, you know, like I think most men must feel that. I mean, I know I do, and it sucks. It's like it's kind of like it's the worst. I mean, even when it's super subtle and it's very well, you know, camouflaged into what's happening. If you're in tune with your partner, you have a real sense of whether they're in the moment or they're trying to speed things along, right? There's really no hiding that. Guys don't ever really need to try to speed things along. They're usually trying to slow things down, and not always successful. But I mean, I think so. There's obviously benefits for both parties, right? What do you see as the biggest obstacle of people putting this into a practice in their life?
Their mindset and the lack of education. Yeah, like the social conditioning that we have received about sex has just impregnated in so many ways that we feel ashamed about it, that we hide it, that we don't really feel comfortable about it. And I think in a lot of ways that just people are not even aware of. So there is like a reprogramming that needs to happen when it comes to the relationship that we have with sex. And then there's just a new education that is not based on porn. And then, you know, there's education that can just be like from modern sexology, which I include in my work. But I think what makes it even more magical is really also taking in the tantric perspective, and that just blows everything to a completely new level. So yeah, reprogramming your sexual relationship and getting a new education that, you know, because there's first you need to unlearn, and then it's like, okay, now let's look at where, you know, a state of mind that is way more open and receptive to new ideas, and a body that is trained. You'll literally need to train your nervous system to rewire, you know, new neurons in your brain to not activate all your old patterns and behaviors.
Now you're talking my language, Arya. You're talking my language now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that needs to happen, right? Because what happens as soon as we move into a state of sexual arousal, it's like an intoxication of the body comes, and automatically we move into the old patterns that we've been doing for years. So you've been having sex in a certain way for years, and now you're listening to this podcast, and maybe you do one masterclass where you get some information, which is a great start. Then still, in the moment that your arousal comes, all your old behaviors get triggered because your neurons are just fired and wired to act and think and behave in a certain way in that state of arousal. So you need to go through a process of
reconditioning,
and to literally you train your nervous system to feel things different. And this is also how you're gonna have so much more physical pleasure in ways that maybe right now you're like, what you talking about? But yeah. So
and look, these are things that constantly come up on my podcast. I don't know if there's been a podcast where these subjects of reconditioning and kind of unlearning and relearning things in a different way. I'm not sure if there's one where those subjects didn't come up, but of course, here we are again, and they're coming up. So it's ironic and perfect. But what's incredible to me is how you can take this practice and start to change the shape of your life, right? Because that's how powerful this is. But it starts with a presence. You can take a class and you probably are going to have to, and you can learn about these things, but then the reconditioning part, that's going to be expedited by your willingness to become present and start to reprogram those subconscious programs. I think that's the fastest way that I know to change is to learn how to be still and get into the programming, right? Get into the subconscious to start to rewrite the code. And when you can rewrite the code to the game, you can rewrite your role in the game, right? That's the beauty of it. That's the power of it. And that's why I think that there's so much to this to be explored, because it's not just a relationship and a sex thing. It's so much more than that. It's a life thing. And I wanted to ask you, Arya, some of the things that you've witnessed, and I imagine that you have such joy watching how this affects your initiates and hearing the stories. I would love for you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I see people's sex life changing, not only their sex life, but I like women, both men and women start to flourish. Like even physical changes are happening in their bodies. Like women start to shine, they start to radiate. Every single time that I train women, there afterwards they hear comments on the street like, what have you been doing? Like, you look so different, you look radiant, like what's changed? Do you have a new boyfriend? And it's like, no, actually I'm connecting more deeply with my sexuality. Like men that feel completely vital again, that are just like, oh my God, I feel like I'm a teenager again. I have so much energy. I feel so vital. I feel so strong. I feel powerful again in my body. I feel like I'm there's a masculinity that develops when you become like a master of your sexual energy. There's a certain power that comes with that. Not the power that we see how it's misused, like not a power over people, but a power and mastery in your own body. And couples whose sex life was just dormant got reawakened and were like, oh my God, we're totally in love again, and having sex like bunnies in a way, like our relationship just started. So I just see people grow and shine in their relationship, but then that reaches out towards her businesses. Like one of my most successful clients, in the time when we were working together, she became a millionaire. Like she put all that sexual energy into her business, and like that exploded because sexual energy is related to creativity. And then, the more sexual you are, your creative channel opens up. And if you channel that into business, then you're going to have financial success as well.
That's right.
Like yeah, it's just benefits and transformations that happen, that people become more happy, more confident, more sourced inside of themselves, and less depending on like external factors that can bring us down. And I mean, when you have a thriving intimacy, then I think that's just the basis of having a really good health and well-being at the same time. So yeah,
absolutely. When you're creating from a place of joy, and your heart is in harmony with your soul, and things are just, it's powerful, right? That's the energy you want to create with. When you're in gratitude because everything is fantastic, that's the kind of energy you need.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like when that is awakened and enlivened, then it just really ripples out to so many other aspects of our lives. Yeah.
And I wanted to talk to you about, because this is a big thing that's kind of ignored in our culture, and no one talks about. You just don't learn about this growing up, about men and not not ejaculating, but not spreading the seed, and how does that fit into tantric technologies? Like, because we're programmed to create children. I mean, there's a lot of ways to put it, but that's the nicest one I could think of.
So I mean, from the tantric perspective, man can actually learn to separate their orgasm from their ejaculation.
Right.
And men are made to spread their seed, but it doesn't mean that every time you have sex or every time you self-pleasure, you need to spread it, because you're not going to make that many children. So if you can have the conscious choice as in, okay, this time I am going to, and this time I'm not. And also, for a lot of men, obviously it just feels really good. But yeah, they're programmed to do it, but it doesn't mean that you have to do it every single time. And if you stay limited to just that explosive orgasm that happens when you ejaculate, then it's like you close the door for deeper states of pleasure that you could access otherwise. But yeah, from the tantric perspective, like a man is actually like brahmacharya, which means like you are in the master of the life force energy. And it's like you contain that energy inside of you, right? Like as monks go celibate on the tantric path, it's like you don't go celibate, but you become a master of the sexual energy.
Right.
So you are in control of it rather than let it be controlled by you.
Right.
But there's specific teachings on how to do that. Like I teach men like how to separate your orgasm from your ejaculation, how that physically works, like emotionally, mentally, energetically. Like it's not as known yet, but I know hundreds and hundreds of men that are able to do this.
And that's the biggest thing, I think, is that's. And I was reading Mantak Chia's book. I think it's Multi-Orgasmic Man. And he talks a lot about how you have to, and you will, if you embark on this journey, you will learn to separate orgasm from ejaculation. And I know that hits men's ears, and they're like, what? It's like
orgasm and don't feel like a flat tire.
So like it is absolutely possible. Like you just imagine, like you can orgasm without ejaculating, which means that you can orgasm again. Then you know what I'm saying? Like think about the implications and possibilities is what I'm encouraging my guys who are listening. It's incredible. So that's, and you hear a lot about that. Like, it's funny because like, I love boxing, and, if you talk to any boxer who's serious about it, or who has, taken and, gotten in a position to spar or be in a competition, in a ring with someone, they have learned or been taught to not be with a woman for at least a few days before that, because they don't have the same kind of stamina in their legs, right? I mean, I don't know how true that is, but it is a very, it's a pretty widely respected rule about training and fighting in general. And I think it comes from a lot of what we're talking about with men, like kind of losing their losing their energy after they ejaculate. But yeah, I wonder if they would have
100%.
more energy if they did it the right way.
Yeah, 100%. I am
Right.
positive. Yeah, 100%. It's like have tantric sex before you go boxing.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that if you read the Magdalene manuscript, you'll read about what a lot of people have come to believe that Mary Magdalene came to do with Yeshua, with Jesus, which was prepare him for what he had to do for people. And it's not what you think. It's incredible, and it goes back to the ancient mystery schools in Egypt, which both Mary and Mary Magdalene were a part of, different sects of the school, or the cult, as some of the apostles called it for their own reasons. But yeah, it's incredible. So you're going to so when did you start teaching men? Have you always taught men, or are you just kind of beginning with that?
No, I started teaching men from I've been studying Tantra, sexuality, personal development, for over 8 years. I started teaching 5 years ago, and I started teaching everyone. I was so excited. I was like, this transformed my life. I'm going to teach everyone. So I was teaching men, women, couples, singles, everyone. And then I started to specialize myself more to really focus on mainly women and couples. But meanwhile, I've always kept the door open for men, but more on individual work instead of group work. And now I'm reopening more, because since COVID is starting to wind down and it can host physical events again, I'm opening doors to both men and women. I actually recently recorded because so many men wrote me hey, I want to start. I want to have something to start with.
Right.
So I recorded a masterclass, which is about non-linear lovemaking, which really is this. Okay, if you want to know more about tantric lovemaking, but you really don't know where to go, this is your, go-to information that you need to at least start. So this is something that I actually released a few days ago.
Oh, perfect.
It's available. So for every man and woman that's listening, this masterclass is available on my website. I'm sure we can add some links.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We'll include every link we can into our video description for my listeners.
And that is just a great way if you want to start with tantric sexuality. I'm going to explain so that the lovemaking we see in the West is very linear, right? It's this approach. It's okay, this, and then it finishes with that.
Right.
And non-linear lovemaking is based upon tantric sexuality, and this is just an amazing way for you to start. That will already just watching this masterclass will already shift the way that you understand even the differences between man and woman in the bedroom, the way that you understand, it will already open your mind to see sex in a different way. So it's a great way. It's a great way to start.
Awesome. That's perfect timing for everything. I'm excited to include that and offer that, because people are listening. They're like, okay, but where do we go?
Where do I go now?
They're like, just give us the information.
That's the way to start. 100%.
That's awesome. So did you watch that the Goop, the Netflix show, right?
Yeah.
What did you think of the erotic blueprint that Jaya, the somatic sexologist, had put forth?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the erotic blueprints. I think that it gives a lot of people perspective to oh, actually there's different ways in how our sexual energy manifests and works. So I think that that's a good way also to start. From my perspective, I feel it can even go much deeper. So sometimes I think that people can then box themselves with oh, this is how I am sexually, versus actually tantric lovemaking. You can develop yourself in so many more ways. So I think it's a good way to start. But I also just want to say that you can develop yourself in so many different aspects that doesn't have to be limited to one blueprint. I think it can give people insight, and I also it's not the way I work. I really support people in developing their full sexual personality, so that they don't have compatibility issues, because what I see, especially I live in Bali, and a lot of people are like, oh, I am this type in the bedroom, I'm that type, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm not compatible with my partner because they are that.
Yeah, they're this way and that way.
I'm this one, and I'm actually teaching people to really develop your full sexual personality, so that you and your partner can really be compatible in the bedroom, and that you can actually learn their sexual language. That's something I teach in my physical retreats.
That's
so
awesome.
There's so much.
That's awesome, and it answers one of my other questions, so that's
great.
Kind of perfect. For all the people listening who maybe don't have a partner right now, do you need a partner for tantric sex? And is it I mean, how much more difficult is it when you don't have one, or how much easier is it when you do, I guess is the question. Can you practice this by yourself?
100%. I started when I was single. And the intimacy that you want to have with another person, you should first cultivate that intimacy with yourself. So even if you have a partner, you should start with yourself and diving into the connection with your own body and your own sexuality and the own insecurities that you have to work on first. So yeah, even if you have a partner, I still recommend people to start with themselves and start educating and start opening your mind and start exploring in your own body, because then when you meet someone else, it's like, oh my God, there's two people here, and it's even more difficult and challenging. So yeah, 100%. I started with myself. I'm teaching a lot of women, I initiate them. It's like, hey, the deeper you go in your own body and in your own intimacy, the deeper you can then go with a partner. So 100% start. Yeah, don't wait until you have a partner. It's actually, I think, easier even to start with yourself, because you only have yourself to deal with.
Right.
And your partner isn't in the picture yet.
Yeah, and then you're ahead of the game when you get in with a partner. You're, which can help to have a leg up. Do you, two things. One, I know that guys are going to hear that and be like, oh yeah, no problem, I'll get started on myself right away. And they're going to go right into let me just find some porn that has tantra, so what do you advise for guys for this? I mean, because I know that a lot of guys are going to be like, I'll just, Google some tantric porn, and then they're going to masturbate to it, and they're going to be like, well, I did my homework.
Wow, thank you. That's such a good point that you bring up, because it's something that in a female mind, I think doesn't come up right away. Actually, I recommend to stop watching porn. And I don't really believe that there's high quality tantric porn out on the internet. Otherwise, I would know about it.
Right.
So, whatever people call tantric porn, I think that's just a way to try to sell it, or it's another way to put on a show. It's another way to create entertainment. And actually, if you want to be more connected with your body, one of the first thing is to stop watching porn, because porn activates dopamine. Porn wants you to have more intensity, and the more that you watch porn and you just touch yourself, it's you're actually not feeling anything in your body. It's more of a mental sex that you're having, and yeah, you're touching your genitals, and then that combination results in okay, I'm moving into an orgasm. But the first thing is to stop watching porn, and to if you're not convinced, because maybe a lot of men are hearing this, but look into actually the effects that porn has on your sexual behavior. So many men have sexual dysfunction, erection problems because of porn. So first
addiction,
of all, look into the effect that porn has on your sexuality. There's a ton of websites out there that really clearly explain what it does to your sexuality, to your sexual behavior, to your sexual patterns. And stop watching porn. So that's the first thing to do. Take my masterclass. That's the second. And yeah, that's a great way to start. Don't be so reliant on visual stimulation, because that again will keep you really limited and will keep your body just wants that type of stimulation, and you'll keep the door closed for other experiences that are there.
Not only that, but society has unfortunately normalized and made porn okay because, we're all so progressive. And the truth is, the problem with porn is not that it's the fact that it can be very, I almost want to use the word damaging on, especially particularly for male, but I know females that struggle.
Yeah,
absolutely. To think that this is a male problem is really kind of naive. It's certainly not, and it also changes. It just, their brain chemistry changes. I have children, so you learn quickly with children. If you give them the video game, if you give them that thing that releases the dopamine so readily, you're going to reset the pleasure centers in a place that is very difficult to get them to use anything, because then everything else is like, I'm like, we're going to the park, okay, we're going to play on the monkey bars. That's boring. I'm like, listen, I will take that video game. Like, it's only boring because the pleasure centers are so high from all the digital technology, the games, the screens, but if you take those away, then things that were once, fun and normal and healthy will be so again. And I think what you're doing is super important. But let me ask you some questions that are more far out than maybe you're used to getting. Tell me, have you ever had an experience? I mean, you're in Bali, it's so beautiful there, but did you ever see any, have you ever seen a UFO? Have you ever had like a supernatural experience? Like, besides totally transcendent sex that you can talk about that is just kind of blew your mind?
Like, there's been a super special experience that I had. I was actually in the Netherlands. It wasn't in Bali, where I was walking in this like big dune field, and suddenly, I don't know, like my attention went directed upwards, and I saw this really, really bright light, like super clear during the day, and then it's flashed like meters across the sky, like horizontally, and it disappeared. And I just was like there perplexed, and I had such a special feeling in my body that I was like, what the fuck was that? And I asked the person who was with me, and I was like, did you see that? And he was like, no, because he was talking to me. And I was just like, I don't know, I just had a feeling like I saw something really magical. Like, it's not a meteor, it wasn't a shooting star, because it didn't go like down, it went horizontal across the sky, and it was this really bright flash. And it like went with a speed that is like way faster than any airplane I've ever seen.
And so the feeling you had, and I love that you talked about that, because that was going to be my next question. I always tell people, I'm like, they're like, how do I know what I saw? I'm like, how did you feel? How did you feel when you saw it?
Was just like, I saw something magical. Like,
that's so cool.
That it was a real energy inside of my body that felt really good.
That's awesome. I think that's how you know you really saw something special. I had a friend once who he's an atheist and he saw a UFO once, and he was like, man, he was like, it was like a religious experience. And I was like, that's a crazy way to describe it coming from you. You know that, right? He was like, yeah. So has there been a single book that you've read that has just blown you away in a way that you're like, okay, I'll never quite be the same? What book would you recommend?
It's interesting because the book that you mentioned, I read that book at the start of my journey as well. The Flower of Life.
Yes.
Yeah, like, that's, and I was blown away by that book. Like, at that time, like, I wasn't introduced so much, like, about all the sacred geometry, and it spoke about so many places, because I was traveling by myself around the world. It spoke about so many places I had visited. So I was just like, oh my God, I wish I knew this when I was at these places. So that's actually a book that really, really absolutely blew my mind when I was at the start of my journey.
Me too. I ended up getting this incredibly complex sacred geometry tattoo that was very much inspired by, and I'm going to have Drumvalo on my show. He's friends with my soul brother who started this podcast with me, but we've been out of touch with him, but we're going to have him on. We'll let you know when I do, because it's going to be a crazy podcast.
Yeah,
And
so that, like, apart from that, I haven't learned Tantra from books. I've learned Tantra from initiations and from other people. And I also believe that you can't properly learn Tantra from books. Like, you need to learn it from people that are experienced, because it goes by transmission. Of course, books help to open your mind. But people always say, okay, so which books should I start reading? And I'm like, actually start going to, like, join master classes, go to retreats, go to workshop, be in person with events. Because in a book, you're just there, you're sitting there, you're reading it alone, you get some insight, but you need to decondition your whole mind. Like, you need to feel the energy, you need to see the responses from people, like when you have breakthroughs. Like, you need support and community for this. So this is why I'm like, great to have some books, nice to prepare your mind for what's possible, but then you need to have a personal experience.
Absolutely. It's not an intellectual experience, even if it is if you first encounter it in an intellectual way, it has to be explored, in every way. It can't just live here. Nothing can just live here, or else it's just it's knowledge with no experience. It's never going to be wisdom. But all right, last question for you, and then I'll let you go. I know you have to go. If you could give one thing to the people on this planet, if you could, make one suggestion or whisper into their ear, what piece of advice would you give them that you believe would help them become the greatest, most joyous expression of themselves on this life?
I would say to pray, but not in a religious matter, but to really pray, like pray with gratitude, pray with joy, like to really
pray the right way.
Pray the right way, like not in the way that religious has taught us, but for me, like, prayer, I think, is the basis of the magic of this universe. And if I put myself in prayer, I feel it opens so many doors in ways that I cannot imagine. So I would say, use prayer in the bedroom as well. I teach about that inside my trainings, but that's
beautiful. Arja, you're beautiful. Thank you so much for your time and for all this incredible wisdom that you've shared with us. I'm excited to see what's going to come of it. We're going to include all of your information in our video description, and I'm probably going to check out your masterclass myself, just because I'm always
totally get it.
Absolutely.
100%.
I'm always a student, and I'm proud of that. But thank you so much for your time. I hope everyone enjoyed the live broadcast. And if you guys want to see a replay, I'm sure Arja will have one, and there'll be one on my YouTube channel and on all the venues that podcasts go out on and stuff. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, dear.
Thank you, Arja. Take care. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.